So it's an honor to be back here today. They invited me for the first time last year at Jacksonville, and I can't decide whether I confused everybody, and so they had to invite me back to clear any confusion, or whether it was that good. So it is an honor to be back. Okay, they're saying it was good. So it is an honor to be back, share the stage with the distinguished professionals today, and speak to a group that's near and dear to my heart. As an amateur, I don't get to accept money for this, but this is what my wife does for a living. So she's a fellow professional horseman, actually at home this weekend taking care of her clients. So I tried to get her to come, but she's like, the weather has been terrible. It's going to be like 60 degrees and rain, and we're going to go ride. So some other things that I tend to do with my life as the equine marketing manager for Cargill Animal Nutrition, and the brands you see with AQHA is Nutrena, a new brand we launched, Pro Elite. But I'm a supposed athlete. I do a lot from biking. I do 100-mile bike rides. I've done a couple triathlons. So I try to relay what I do in my own diet over to the horse, because aside from humans, there's not really a species on earth that does the level of athletic performance as the horse. And that's what we make a living off of. So we use a lot of comparisons, because equine nutrition and human nutrition, there's a lot of similarities, but they're a lot more advanced from the human side. So we bring some of that information in to what we do with our horses. So I'm trying to raise a daughter who is a horse bug. So we got her first horse this past year, and his name is Hi, My Name is Glenn. If there's not a better name of a horse for an 8-year-old girl than Hi, My Name is Glenn, I don't know what it is. So we'll get started. So I'm going to kind of talk in broad generalities about two main areas that are really important to the horse nutrition and horse feed world. And then I'm also going to talk about a program that we started just short of a year ago to benefit our AQHA professional horsemen through our certified farm program. Amino acids. Amino acids are an often overlooked component of the horse's diet. You know, you see protein, we talk a lot about fat. You know, there's all this buzz in the world about probiotics and all the health benefits of probiotics and yeast cultures. But there's probably not a single more important nutrient to have a horse looking amazing than amino acids. And so I want to kind of start with that and how that information, what they are, what they do, and then how you look at those in your feeding program at your farm. What are those amino acids? There's actually 20-some amino acids that are needed by the horse. And look at amino acids like the 26 letters in the English language. Amino acids make up protein, and when you combine amino acids together in specific chains of specific lengths, you create protein. You create what the body's made of. 10 of those amino acids are what we call essential. They have to be taken in through the diet. The other 11, they kind of vary on whether there's 20 or 21. The horse can create in their gastrointestinal tract. But these 10 that you see on the screen have to be taken through the diet, either through the feed or the hay or a supplement that you provide. The horse cannot create them. And so this is what we really focus on from a nutritional aspect, is what these 10 amino acids do. So to continue on the alphabet analogy, these 10 amino acids are like the vowels in our English language. If you take A, E, I, O, and U out of the alphabet, you can't make a word. I've tried. I've written some emails with some words without vowels, but you can't make a legible word. You will see these on feed bags. You'll see these in guarantee analysis. A lot of times you'll see lysine, which is what we call the first limiting amino acid. Methionine, threonine, tryptophan are seen on a lot of feed tags today and are guaranteed levels. And then you'll see some products out there that talk about isoleucine, leucine, valine, which are what we call branch chains, which have a big benefit to muscle recovery. So after you've competed a horse long, hard through a day or gone across the pasture chasing cattle, having some branch change in the diet allow that horse to recover faster. And then you've got some of the additional amino acids down there. But these all have to be taken in through the diet. Otherwise, it's a deficient diet. So where will we see the deficiency? You know, it's interesting in an organization as broad as Cargill, where actually for the first time in our history, globally, they don't recognize horse as a relevant species, because you get out of the US and the equine industry is just kind of minor. They're talking beef or poultry. The equine has become so big, our global partners are saying, you know what, the horse is important in Italy, in Brazil, in China. But when you go and compare to commercial species, you have all these numbers and data to say this change in the diet does this. Usually change in average daily gain or feed efficiency, or we produce X more pounds of meat from the poultry or the cow. We don't have that in a horse. We judge horses by visual appraisal. That's what our judges do. That's what we do as exhibitors. We want that horse looking amazing when we go into the show pen or we take it out to show our friends. Protein makes a horse look amazing, and amino acids make a horse look amazing. Why is that? Hair is 95% protein. Hoof, 95. Actually, if you send hoof and hair in for chemical analysis, you cannot tell the difference coming back. They're virtually the same chemical makeup. If you got a good hair coat, you'll have good hooves. You can see that faster in the hair coat. It takes 6 months to create a good hoof. Tendons, 93% protein. Skin, 90% protein. Muscle, 73% protein. Bone, it's not on here, is 30% protein. The horse is made of protein and thus its subsequent amino acids. So, there's a lot, again, everybody focuses on, well, what's the fat content of the feed and what's this and what's that? It's easy to meet the calorie content. This is the hard part. There's nothing more powerful to change the look of a horse as opposed to having a great amino acid profile in the diet because of everything it affects. So how do we visually appraise this, especially from a muscle standpoint? About 2 years ago, we released a program for all of our brands, mostly seen on our Nutrena brand, called Top Line Balance. And this is really looking at the muscle function, because muscle is really what a lot of times we can see, and we evaluate these horses across their top line. And the goal, you gotta be a little bit of a judge, and you gotta account some breed differences, but we do not want any point in area of that top line to be sunken in. The easiest way to do this is start at the horse's withers and just take your hand on the side and follow it all the way back over his hip, croup, and loin. If your hand any point in time sinks in, you're deficient in muscle in that area. We'll talk about later, we've all seen the Henneke body condition scale that came out of A&M in the early 80s. They go from 1 to 9. You don't get fat on a horse's back until they're at 8 or 9 body condition. We don't need our horses that fat, but we got to have good top lines. So with this top line evaluation system, what you do is you evaluate one of each of these 3 areas, the wither and back, loin, and croup, and you mark whether it's adequate or not, just a yes or no. Is your hand sunk in, or is your hand at least flat? If you get to a halter horse, your hand's gonna be bulging out. That horse has a bigger genetic potential for muscle mass. If you get a check mark in all 3 areas, that horse is an A top line. That's our goal. That's what we want. We want these horses with amazing top lines. If you only have 2 of 3 areas checked, it's a B. If you only have 1 of 3 areas checked, it's a C. And if you have none of them checked, it's a D. Based on some evaluation, and you can kind of go through this at toplinebalance.com and kind of use some visual appraisal and score your own horse, we have about 20% of horses evaluated that are coming back at D top lines. To where a good visual equation was they're going to look like a dairy cow. If you stand at them from behind, they're going to be very angular across their hips and croup. They're just not going to have that good muscle. Every horse can get there. but it takes quality amino acids, it takes quality protein, it takes a good diet to do that, it takes a good forage foundation to bring that about. So what is that? What numbers are those? So I built I built some scenarios here for a 1,200-pound horse. We've got light, moderate, and intense work. That's basically defined by how many hours a day the horse works and the amount of protein and lysine they need on a daily basis. It shows a representation here. This is combining your feed and your hay together. And don't get hung up with the percentages. We always say, well, what's the percent protein on this diet? You know, is it an 8? Is it a 10? Is it a 12? As you see there, as I go from maintenance at an 8.5, and if I go to intense training, which is over 3 hours of work a day, I jump up to a 12% protein. You're like, well, that's not that big of a change. Yeah, but look at the grams of protein difference. That maintenance horse is probably going to consume about 15 pounds a day of hay and grain. That intense training horse is going to consume upwards of 30. So that total intake of protein has well more than doubled. The lysine has more than doubled in terms of what they need in their diet. Now, how does that come if you were to happen to use some of our products? What is that? How could you get that? So an average for a horse in light training, if I use that example, would be 15 pounds of an average grass hay. We have a product called ProForce Fuel in our Nutrena line that if we feed 5 pounds a day, which is a recommended amount, 9.1% protein and 41 grams of lysine. So we're meeting that need for that light training horse. But look there at the bar chart. I don't know if you can see the numbers. The red pie is the amount of weight that ProForce Fuel represents in the diet. So it is representing like a quarter of the poundage of the diet, but it's providing 47% of the lysine. The point with protein and amino acids is hay alone will not do it, especially grass hay. You get to alfalfa, you can maybe get there, but if you're feeding grass hay, you have to give some additional protein or amino acid source. There's just not enough. Grass by nature doesn't do it. What are some other ways amino acids can help? So when we're working these horses, this is where we've brought some information from the human side. There's an aspect of adding amino acids and protein following work that increases their muscle recovery. So this is actually a human study, but we've applied it to a horse here, is if you feed, basically these people were worked and trained and then given 3 different diets. One was basically a high carb diet, a high pasta diet, for example, or a high sweet feed diet for our horses. The crossed or the slash bar is where they were given a relatively high carb diet, but good protein. And then the black bar is they were given the other 2 components, relatively high carbs, good protein, but they were supplemented with the branched chain amino acids within 45 minutes after exercise. What you want to look at is the amount of net balance of muscle. So the bar completely over on your right, the black bar is the highest. If we can feed a branched chain amino acid source, which only comes from milk, 45 minutes after exercise, those horses will recover faster. They will break down less muscle. So you're at the Congress for 3 weeks. You're riding those horses every day. You don't think you're not breaking muscle down every day. If you want them riding as good on day 1 as day 21, this is a program that can get you there, because you stop that muscle breakdown. There's less soreness, they're less tired. They're not more hyper, they just can go out and compete on a more regular basis at their full function. How do we get there? So we have a product within our line called of Progressive Nutrition called Top Line Extreme. It's whey protein, it's a muscle milk for horses. I recommend trainers all the time go in and feed about a 1/4 pound. I mean, everybody, when they're done riding or training or working a horse, they go in, time in a stall to cool out. Give them a 1/4 pound of this. That's the equivalent of drinking a muscle milk after you've gone out and done your morning run. We can do the same thing for our horse partners to increase and improve their muscle recovery. Calories. Along with protein and amino acid, the horse needs calories. This is what's going to put the body weight on. This is what's going to keep them, their ribs covered up. You know, and it's, you can get calories from a lot of different sources. But also the type of work you do, the type of training you do influences what calorie sources you need for your horses. So when we fuel that engine, look at calories as the fuel. If the amino acids in the muscle are the engine, calories are our diesel. They are our fuel. So we've got basic two types of calorie sources we can add in the equine diet. Carbohydrates, which we have two forms of those. We have starches and sugars, so they result in glucose. We've tended to move away from these probably over the past 15 years in diet because this is what caused too much starch and glucose leads to colic, laminitis, hyper horses. My company kind of started that trend with a product called Safe Choice 12 years ago of really the low carb or controlled starch and sugar deal. We may have actually swung too far and we've impacted the performance of some of our horses because we've got too much starch and sugar out of the diets. You also have fat, or fiber, excuse me, which is from your forage. I mean, it's a good replacement for starch and sugars, not as calorie dense, but you'll see that as in these lower starch and sugar feeds, you'll see a higher fiber content. Beet pulp, soy hulls, your hay is a good source of that calorie source. And then we get to fats, which has been a trend in the feed industry probably for the past 20 years of higher fat feeds. I mean, we have feeds that are pushing 13% fat today, where when I started 20 years ago, 6 was high. And these are going to come from vegetable sources. We got to look for omega-3s. But all of those calories function different in the muscle, or those calorie sources. And so it depends on the muscle fiber type that's in your horse of really what blend they need and then what kind of work you're doing with them. So when we look at, there's 3 muscle fiber types that our horses have. And when I got the breeds up here, this is kind of average. You can actually change that blend in a horse based on how you work them. But you can see, or as you know the different breeds, you'll kind of understand the difference. So slow twitch muscle fibers are really long. They go for a long period of time. They don't have a lot of mass, but they're really long and lean. What's our long and lean horse breed out there? Arabians. You know, they're doing the 100-mile endurance rides across the Mojave Desert. But they can go forever. But they don't produce a lot of mass. I mean, they just don't get big, bulky muscle, but they actually tend to prefer burning fat. So they're going to need a preferential calorie source of fat coming from the diet. Then we have our fast twitch muscles, which is what quarter horses are known for. Very fast contractions. That's why we do quarter-mile races instead of 2-mile races. But it produces a larger muscle mass, kind of our sprinters. It preferentially wants glucose for fuel. So starch and sugar sources. It actually is the quarter horse is a breed that kind of actually needs some starch and sugar in the diet to really fuel that muscle, especially if you're out there working them. And then there's there's another type of muscle fiber that's mixed, and it's more prevalent in warm bloods and thoroughbreds where it kind of does a little bit of both. And it can be trained to go either way. It can actually be trained to be a slow twitch muscle or a fast twitch based on how you train the horse. You change that training regimen on the horse, it takes about 3 weeks. You can actually convert that mixed muscle fiber to be slow twitch to fast twitch based on just how you work them. If you work them at higher intensity, slower duration, and it actually starts changing what fuel source it burns. Every horse has all 3. You know, we've seen long and lean quarter horses and we've seen bulkier Arabs. That's a representation of the type of muscle fibers they have. So the genetics will determine that along with their breed. But then how we fuel that really plays into effect. So this goes back to the Henneke scale that was turned out in the early 80s from A&M, where we use this on a daily basis, where we go out and rank a horse from 1 to 9, whether they're extremely thin or extremely overweight. We've tried to simplify it a little bit to basically go anything. If you can easily see or feel the ribs, it's a 4 or less. If you can't see the ribs, but you can feel them pressing, it's a 5 to 6. If you can no longer feel ribs, it's above an 8. Just trying to simplify it for the average horse owner. but you can still rank them from 1 to 9. With our show horses or performance horses or anything we're taking out in the public, we at least need them to be a 5. I remember Karen and Pete and I last year at level 1 were having to have some conversations with some people like, man, that horse is a 3.5 to a 4, and how do we get them up so you can't see ribs? I mean, that's ultimately the goal we don't want to see. You know, in my career, I had the distinct privilege of working, and they still use our products for Disney World and the Budweiser Clydesdales, and I always tried to keep those horses at a 7. Because when you get the general public going in there, look at a Cinderella pony or a Budweiser Clydesdale, the last thing they want to see is a rib. I mean, they just don't understand. So, but this is a function of how many calories we can pump into the diet. If you pump in more calories than the horse burns, they're going to put weight on. They're going to increase their body condition. So how many calories do our horses need, and how many, what does it come from? So again, going back to that same 1,200-pound horse, light, moderate, intense, you know, we're talking around maintenance at 18,000. So that calorie is the same thing as our calorie. And they say for us we need 2,000 calories a day. So that maintenance horse is 18,000 calories a day. Light training horse is 21,000, on up to intense 29,000. That intense training horse is going to take a lot of feed and a lot of calories coming from the hay. We'll go back to the same example that we had before, that 15 pounds of grass and 5 pounds of fuel is 21,000 calories. So that works for our light training horse in that situation. That's where you've got to find out that combination of your hay and feed combined and what is it delivering. Then it comes into calorie sourcing. So this is kind of the next evolution of what we do with our calories and how we bring calories into the diet. There's basically 3 types of work we can do with our horse. There's by definition 2, but most of us sit in a gray area of cross-training. If you either have aerobic work or that horse needs glucose in their diet. They need starch and sugar because they're working so hard and their heart rate is so high that they cannot burn fat. Horses can only burn fat at about a heart rate below, probably 130 to 140. Anything above that, they have to burn glucose because there's not enough, the body can't pump enough blood to keep enough oxygen moving. So when we're doing speed, intensity, and competition work, barrel racing, roping, really where we're on the clock for a short duration, that horse is in aerobic training. They need starch and sugar in their diet. Or I'm backwards. We need anaerobic training. So I got my slide messed up. So that's anaerobic, sorry. When we increase our duration and decrease our intensity, which is confusing to people saying, well, I mean, I'm not working as hard. It's all about how high the heart rate is. Basically, we get into what is, with my correction, aerobic work. The horse, there's enough oxygen flowing. The horse can burn fat. It can also burn starch and sugar and use a combination thereof. So quarter horses, we may have a few. This is going to be some trail riding, something where you're going all day long. Most of our horses are going to fall because we're doing a combination thereof. We're working them pretty hard. We're going out and loping circles really hard, and then we're backing them back off, walking, jogging. They're going to be in this cross-training realm. So you need a blend because that horse is going to bounce back and forth between anaerobic and aerobic training. So that's where you pick a feed that basically changes its starch and sugar and fat content. So if you're in that cross-training realm, that's where you kind of flow in with like a ProForce fuel that has a good fat content, but has a moderate starch and sugar. This works great for all-around horses. Now, if I'm doing a speed event or I'm working that horse really intensely for a short period of time, I'm going to need a feed that has more starch and sugar in it. So that's where in our lineup today we've got a product called ProForce XTN. It's got oats, it's got barley, it has higher starch and sugar, virtually the same fat content, but it's bringing more starch and sugar-based calories into that diet. Or if we're doing longer duration type work, that's where we bring in a product, again in the ProForce line called Fiber. More calories coming from fiber and fat, and are actually lowest starch and sugar content in the line. They don't need the starch and sugar, they want the fat. They need that preferential fat to go long distance training. So that's kind of the wrap up on some of the nutrition. Keep in mind, or the takeaways, is the body is made from amino acids. If we want to create a beautiful looking animal to reach their genetic potential, horses, nutrition can only allow the horse to reach their genetic potential. I had a trainer one time who shall remain nameless said, you know what, I bred this 15-hand mare to this 15-3 stud, and this sucker is 16-3, and it's because of your feed. I'm like, my feed did not do that. That horse had that genetic potential to reach that height. So essential amino acids must be in the diet. Remember those: lysine, methionine, threonine, and they have a huge impact on performance. And then the calories we fuel to maintain that body condition, and the calorie source that's impacted by work. To wrap up, I want to talk about a new program that we started. I think we started it in May of this past year. So as part of our relationship with AQHA from Cargill and Nutrena, you see us mostly branded as Nutrena, we're a big supporter of AQHA Professional Horsemen. So we've been trying to figure out a way over the years to how else can we give back? How else can we provide a benefit to the professional horsemen out there that support and drive our industry? We have a program called Certified Farm. So that Certified Farm program is based on your quarterly feed purchases from Cargill of any of our brands, which I'll explain here real briefly. And it's managed by your consultant and the dealer. You really don't have to do anything except for sign a form and then buy our products. And based on the amount of product you buy from us, quarterly, if you meet the certain minimum threshold, you will get a check back from Cargill, quarterly, for your purchases. So here's the kind of the tiers, and there's forms out there that I can get you hooked up with. But if, basically the entry-level tier is 175 bags a quarter. Roughly in this part of the country, that takes about 15 head of horses on feed to meet that threshold. If you get out west where hay quality goes better, it probably takes 20 to 25 head of horses on feed to qualify for the program. And then you're done. All you gotta do is buy our products. And then it has to be purchased through an independent retailer. This is something that's kind of hung some people up. Probably not in this part of the central part of the U.S., but out west, some of the Tractor Supply and chain stores become really prominent, and independent retailers are really going away. This is a program to support our independent retailer. So somebody that's not a chain store, you can't buy the products through a chain store for this program. I do want to specify that. So what does AQHA Pro Horseman members get? So this is the top number that you see. So like tier 1, if you bought 175 bags of Safe Choice Pro Force or Empower, if you're in the Certified Farm program, you get $1 a bag rebate quarterly. If you're also a member of Pro Horsemen, you now get an extra quarter bag. You now get $1.25 back. And then the tiers go up from there. The only requirement that we have is that when you fill out the form, you submit a picture of your membership card, of your Pro Horseman membership card. We do verify it. Tawana and I have had to go back and forth a couple times to make sure somebody's membership's active. But this is a member program exclusive to AQHA Pro Horseman. So we get a lot of questions about our brands because all of you from all over the country, and we have a wide variety of brands. So the brand that you can get anywhere with this program is Nutrena. Nutrena is nationwide, and the program works for that across the board. We acquired several other brands recently. Legends is a brand if you're on the East Coast. I know I've got some people coming in later today that would be familiar with this brand. Legends is also applicable to this. Progressive Nutrition products fit into this program, and also a new brand we launched, Pro Elite, are all eligible for this program. So you don't have to just buy Nutrena products. So kind of putting a bow on it, what kind of money does it turn into? If you were to buy 175 bags in a quarter, your regular Certified Farm rebate check would be $175 quarterly. If you're a member of AQHA Pro Horsemen and signed up through this program, you get $218. So you get an extra $175 annually back from us. And you can see how it tiers up from there. This was just another way we felt we could give back to the industry, to the people that really drive our industry with the Pro Horseman program. We already do it, a lot of different things today with the Ride the Pattern programs. Those are Nutrena Ride the Pattern. We match those funds. So according to the latest figures, you guys tell me if those numbers are right, but we've matched $25,000 back into the Pro Horseman Crisis Fund through Karen and the team that goes around and passes the bucket at the Ride the Patterns. We match that dollar for dollar. So we're giving back to the industry in many ways, and we're asking for your support back to be that way. So with that, is there a chance for questions, or where are we at on time? Okay. Any questions from the audience, or is it too early? Oh. Bulk works. Because I can convert a bulk order to a bag. How many bags that is? Because it's actually based on tonnage. 40 bags is a ton of bulk. So if you're buying bulk Nutrena, now it has to be branded. Yeah, but nope, that'll qualify.